Welcome back to Galactic Reviews. This week we reviewed the movie Terror on the Prairie. It is a new film done by the DailyWire. Honestly, after watching this film, I wasn't expecting a whole lot, considering that it's one of DailyWire's new films. They haven't done a whole lot of films. I think this is maybe like their fourth or fifth film. So it wasn't really expecting somewhat a sub tier kind of deal. And considering that Run Hide Fight was written for Hollywood, but knowing Hollywood wasn't going to touch it, didn't know how this one was actually going to work. I thought I did fairly well. There were some points around I was like, okay, you could have trimmed that up a bit, but it definitely felt like I was watching a longer version of Little House on the Prairie at sometimes. So it had that old timey feel of kind of like you are back in the old West kind of deal. So I mean, it did work out for it. The plot had a lot more stuff in it than I would have thought at first, especially after watching the trailer. And it stays roughly within the trailer's thing of it's a mom trying to take care of the kids while the dad's away and protecting her family from these bandits supposedly that come and try to harm them. And it kind of does follow that. There is a little bit more into the story, and it's very well thought out, which I didn't think it was going to get this thought out, but it was. And which is something that's been lacking in a lot of recent shows and movies that we've been reviewing. MCU. But yeah, no, I thought it was really good. A lot of the stuff made a lot of sense. There was some stuff that I was like, I wish they would have done better. Like the soundtrack they didn't really have a soundtrack at all for the film until like the very end of it when they play that song, and then in the saloon where you have the piano going off. But other than that, not a whole lot of a soundtrack, not any soundtrack really. And to be honest, after the first like 10 minutes, you really don't think about it until the saloon, and then again at the end where you're just like, wow, that really had no music. I feel like giving it a 7 is too small, but giving it an 8 is too much. So I'm going to give it a 7.5. I think that's about the best of both worlds, as it is a good film, but you can definitely tell it's got the potential, but it isn't quite there, but they're getting daggone close to actually doing like good films.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nothing you're going to remember after like a couple weeks, but it's still a good watch. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10.
Well, I'm going to play off what you said about the music. 100%, I'm in the same boat. I didn't realize it didn't really have any music until like as soon as the song at the end popped up. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is the first music I've heard in this movie in a very long time, if at all.
Yeah, and to be fair about that, I did know about it beforehand because I had watched somebody else review it, but I just didn't
paid attention to it. But
I didn't realize it until later. So I was just like, wow.
I think that even without the music, I feel like the music might have distracted you a little bit. I think it honestly doesn't really need music. It gets its point across. All the music would do would be like intensify some of the feelings a little bit. But I don't think it's necessary really for this movie. I think it has a good enough script and plot to drive everything home without the music to back it up. So that's honestly really good on their part for the script, the acting, the shots, camera angles, all of that. And it felt like a classic Western movie, in my opinion. I was not disappointed with that. I was a little confused on the genre they put it under, a Western thriller. I suppose I can understand now where they get like the thriller part of it. I don't see the need for you to classify it as a thriller. To me, that's just a casual Western movie in the first place. There's no Western movie without, something like that going on.
Yeah, true. Not that I can remember anyway. There probably is a few, but not a whole lot.
Yeah. So honestly, they did a really good job. The script was very good. I'm trying to think, there were no really big points that I was disappointed in this movie really at all. And if there was, they were quickly forgotten.
Yeah.
Because you get drawn back into different scenes so quickly and get engrossed in it is just very well put together. I give this movie an 8 out of 10. I would 100% watch this movie again.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's just one of those movies that you're not going to completely 100%.
For a Western, let me phrase it, a modern Western movie, one of the best that I've seen in a long while. So I'm really happy with this movie. if they continue to make movies like that with the plot, the camera angles, the acting, everything about that, and they improve upon it with like CGI or whatever they decide to do with
I
it,
think they were going more so the
depending on the
practical
movie.
effect route, but that's what
Yeah,
it
well,
seemed.
depending like on what their next movie is,
Yeah,
and everything, because a Western very easy to do, minimalistic. You don't have to do much for CGI or anything. But if they do something else with that has more going for it with CGI and camera shots and everything, I hope it's the same quality plot wise. They put time into it and make it so that the CGI doesn't bring down the movie.
yeah.
Because
I would say I think they've kind of done one of those. It was called, I believe it was called Hyperion, or the Hyperions, where it was just a whole bunch of like superhero kind of deal, where like kids had these gauntlets, and that gave them superpowers. If I remember that trailer correctly, that movie might be about the closest thing to kind of like a good comparison between them using CGI and not. Because I mean, Run,
okay,
Hide, Fight in this movie really didn't have any CGI.
no,
A lot of practical
um,
effects and stage makeup. So
yeah. And honestly, if they continue down that path, doing, I don't want to say low budget films, but with that aspect, with the CGI counts is so costly that I'm gonna throw it into like a low budget film
mhm.
because they're really not using any CGI at all. They're just putting it all into stage makeup and everything else. But they're doing a very good job. They don't have that many backdrops they have to choose from because they're just choosing generally one location for the whole movie. So they're doing great with their planning and execution. I hope it stays that way and we keep getting movies like this one. I think, honestly, all in all, for the cast they chose for this movie, they all did a very, very good job. Was not disappointed with much of anything.
Yeah,
Um,
and everything was really well explained to the point where they explained why the kid could shoot better than the mom in some cases. Because like he
the
was
only
actually the first
actually
guy that shot somebody.
Yeah, the only problem I did have, and it's not really a problem, it was just something I expected to happen that didn't, but I suppose that's okay in the long run. I expected the Indians to come and help because usually if you help them, they'll come and help you if you're in trouble once to repay you for helping them.
Yeah, to come back and be even or whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
So I was expecting that through like the last like 30-40 minutes, like them to show up.
yeah, I could see that, but
I'm okay with them not showing up, and I feel
yeah,
like the knife that he gave her was significant enough to drive the fact that in a way they did help. That was just something I was expecting to happen, and it
dur-
just didn't. But I'm okay with it not happening.
during that one scene where she stabs the guy in the head, in my mind, I'm going like, how is he still alive and trying to breathe? And then in my mind, Andrew's in the back going, adrenaline, like he does every single time that we do a movie.
Honestly,
Like that's the
I don't know if
explanation for
I don't
everything.
know if she stabbed him in like the temple or if it was like behind the
Yeah,
jaw.
and I don't really remember, but it was
Well,
definitely
that and
up
it
here to the
honestly
point
was
where,
like it was a very dark camera angle.
yeah,
You just know it was somewheres in the side of the head.
to me that was still a funny bit where like Andrew's in the back of my mind going like adrenaline, adrenaline.
Even with that, he wouldn't be alive for that
No,
long.
no, no, I get that, and that's why she was just like stabbing him in the heart, and it was like he's gonna die soon anyway, and he's not gonna call anybody. You kind of cut if you cut his throat, he's
Yeah.
gonna be choking on blood. He's not gonna be trying to scream bloody murder. They explained everything really well to me. To me, in my thought process, they explained everything like why they were there. It wasn't a coincidence. Why they were out for them. That wasn't a coincidence. Her, ironically, every person that she shot was at close range. Like she could
Which
never shoot anybody further down
which
range. The only person,
they
and they
they
explained that
stayed
really well.
on, and well, the thing is they didn't contradict it at any point. They
No, like
stayed
you were expecting
on.
maybe they might contradict it for that big hero moment, but like they never did. They made it all make sense, and
It was all pretty much point blank.
yeah, it was all analyzed and it all made sense in the world and story that it was getting told, which has been lacking in a lot of films, to be honest. It's honestly been lacking in a whole bunch of films recently, to the point where it's shocking and jarring as how accurate they kind of were with staying within the continuity they had previously established
Yeah.
for this film. So that's definitely one of the best things I can say about this film was they kept in the tracks they had set beforehand and made it all make sense and still had a very fascinating story to tell.
Even with that big hero moment at the very end, I was like, you know what, that's satisfying.
Yeah,
Also came into like you finally get to see at the very end the father was a sniper, which they mentioned throughout the whole movie, and you're like, okay, I'm just waiting.
Yeah.
And then very at the very end, I was like, okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
So everything that they did say and explain, you gotta see happen. I think the one of the parts that needed music and it didn't have music, the first like 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that
It
because that
was
was the
it
point
was
where I was just
very
like,
it was very quiet, no sound, nothing was happening, and you just see someone walk across the screen.
yeah. But I
And
will
it's
say it
and it's
did
still
set you,
nothing.
but I will say it did set you up for the rest of the,
No, it did. It
because I
did.
mean later on you would have had to you would have been thinking where's the music at some point you
I
would have been
suppose.
thinking that,
I
so
suppose.
and
No,
that could
you're
have
right.
pulled you out quite easily. I definitely didn't like it at first, but after going all through it and then realizing I had already seen an hour of it and none of it was with music, I was like, well, I don't mind it because that definitely did set the tone for the rest of it.
There are very few things that can pull off on not having music and them being extremely good, and this movie was one of them.
Thank you for everyone for watching this episode of Galactic Reviews. Join us next time when we will get Andrew's choice. And see you next time on Galactic Reviews.